Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Athlete to Entrepreneur. This is our seventh Athlete to Entrepreneur panel. We're excited to have you here with us. As always, we have another amazing lineup of panelists. I want to encourage anybody, I usually forget to do this at the beginning, anybody tuning in today, make sure you ask questions. Of course, we're going to be having a dialogue with all these amazing athletes turned entrepreneurs. But at the same time, I want to give everyone a chance to add comments, add questions so that you can get some feedback in real time from some of these great people doing great things. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce our first guest. This is my homegirl, Bridget Case. I'm excited for you all to hear from her. She's a powerhouse. She's I could go on and on about that, but we'll just get into this. I'm gonna give her a quick intro and then we'll get into it. Bridget is an accomplished journalist, podcast host, and social media personality. Former sports anchor for CBS and NBC, Bridget now brings her broadcast talents to the digital world. Bridget hosts at the After Orange Slices podcast, which I was a guest on, shameless plug. She also hosts her daily NFL show on Twitch and Turbo Talk Live with Super Bowl champion Robert Turbin. She's gained media attention for her interviews with Ken Griffey Jr., Felix Hernandez, Dez Bryant, Carson Palmer, and many more. Bridget is a former NFL cheerleader for the San Diego Chargers and was game captain at the University of Oregon, where she cheered in 3 BCS bowl games, including a national championship. Please welcome to Athlete to Entrepreneur, Ms. Bridget Case.
Your time here.
What's up, Bridget? I'm sorry, it was coming.
How's
there
it
might
going?
be a delay on my end. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I was just saying, I feel so bad you had to spend like most of the panel just getting through that bio.
No, hey, listen, you got an impressive bio. I'm happy to read it. I was reading it last night. I was like, nah, that's a bio, you know?
I've reworked it so many times and I was like, I just need to like, I just need to show people, okay, here's what's most important to me right now. And I think that's kind of the problem. Like we get so worried about like making everything sound like a resume. It's just like, let's just talk about what's important to us right now. But anyway, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to be here with you. It's been a while since we actually connected. So
I
what I was thinking last night, like, man, your story is powerful. And the last time we really spoke and went deep, you were interviewing me. So I'm excited to dive into your story because there's a couple of things that I want to hit on just to make sure that people are really getting the most out of your story, which is a great one, like I said. But I wanted to start it out with this. Your transition from being a professional, like NFL cheerleader, which obviously puts you in a very small category of people who reached that goal. How did it end? Was it a choice to walk away from that? I saw your eyes get big. I'll just let you take from there. How was it walking away from being a cheerleader?
So at the time I was so ready. I think, I don't know when you started playing football, but I started dancing at 2 years old. So by the time I retired, I had been dancing for 22 years and I was just burnt out. And it's like, that was all I knew. That was my entire life. Anyone who's an elite athlete knows, like, especially growing up, I feel like you kind of find your stride when you're in college and, you've got friends and it's all kind of intermixed. But when you're growing up and you're missing parties, you're missing out on a lot of your childhood because, I'm at the studio training for 5 to 10 hours some days. And it's like, when I went to college, there's this whole new world and I realized, wow, there's other things out there for me besides, just my sport. And by the time I went to cheer with the Chargers, there are a lot of things that I really, really want to work on reforming within the professional dance and cheerleading world, whether it's NBA, whether it's NFL. There's a lot of problems and like we can get to that another time. But I really realized how prominent those were because as a little kid growing up, being a competitive dancer, well, you can't be a professional competitive dancer. You have to go and become an NFL cheerleader, NBA dancer, or there are only a few options. And once I got there and I realized, wow, like this is always what I wanted to accomplish. I grew up in Southern California, but when I was actually in it, I realized how much I had to change who I was. Like, and I don't mean necessarily as a person, but how I was perceived. Like I felt like my voice was being silenced because I was Bridget, the Charger girl. Like my presence was owned by the San Diego Chargers organization. They had obviously control over what your hair color was, like what your weight is. Like there were so many things. I couldn't have my last name on social media. I couldn't post a picture in my uniform on social media. That since has changed because social media wasn't what it is now, where it's like a lot of these women go in and audition, and at tryouts they have hundreds of thousands of followers or whatever. So it's like you can't. I think because the influencer thing wasn't really a thing back when I was in it. But my point being that I felt like I was not just a robot, but it felt all scripted, and I wanted to talk about who Bridget really is, the struggles that I've endured to get to where I got. And don't get me wrong, are you kidding? I would do it 100 times over. It was the best experience, and I am so proud to say what I've accomplished. Like being out on that field, especially like primetime games, and like my coach always used to say, there's nothing bigger than the NFL as far as an experience, and it's so true because it is so incredible, and to feel like you just feel that fire, and that was so wonderful. But a lot of that would kind of simmer down when I wasn't on the field, or like practices stopped becoming fun, and it felt like I just was wanting more. I wanted to get more out of my adult life, and especially because I hope someday that NFL cheerleading can pay a full-time salary, but right now it doesn't. So because of that, you're just burnt out and exhausted. And I had already started my first internship with NBC in Palm Springs. And then I worked my way up to production specialist, and then I became a sports reporter just because somebody left and I got an opportunity. But that was a 2.5-hour drive from San Diego to Palm Springs. So I would, go to practice until like 10:30 at night, 11 at night. And then I would drive overnight out to Palm Springs. I'd like sleep on the couch at work, or we had some family friends who had a house out there. So I'd sleep there. And I was so burnt out and tired. And I realized, oh my gosh, like I have always wanted to be a journalist. This is where my passion lies now. I can talk about sports. I can still instill my experience that I've had. I can kind of combine everything together. Because here's another thing, like when you're an NFL cheerleader, you're not allowed to talk to NFL players. And I realized, I was like, I want to be a sports reporter. I'm going to have to make those relationships happen. I can't completely close myself off from the sports world. And that was getting really frustrating. And not being able to capitalize on, my identity at the time. So there were just like a lot of little things. And I know like that sounds silly, but this business is all about relationships. So feeling like I was behind in being able to network and create those relationships and be who I was getting really frustrating. And mostly I was just burnt out. So I knew I was ready, and I said goodbye peacefully. Yes, I do miss it a lot, but it was time.
Yeah, I hear you. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think sometimes it would be easy for someone from the outside looking in to look at everything you do today and everything you've accomplished today and think that you just have this easy road. You're this NFL cheerleader. You just go on to build this business and you're popping up everywhere and doing all these amazing things. And I love that you're so vulnerable and sharing that part of your story, because you talked about starting to dance at 2 years old. When I was 2, I was probably somewhere making a mud pie or something in the backyard, and I think it's really cool that you're being transparent and sharing that I did it all these years, but towards the tail end, you were burned out on it. And this is another part I remember from when you interviewed me. You got into your story a little bit, and you were talking about how, okay, you decided I'm done being a cheerleader. Now I'm going to go full into journalism. But even that, you felt like during that experience, your voice wasn't being heard, and you weren't able to be, 100% authentically Bridget. So can you talk about that experience from the time you stopped cheerleading and then you went into the start of your professional career?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know how this goes. Those first few years, and it can last a really long time. It could last your entire lifetime. That transition is so difficult because initially it depends on how you leave your sport. I think leaving on injury or other things is a lot difficult. If you're not leaving by choice, luckily I did get to leave by choice. So I am forever grateful for that. I mean, I'm sure, well, you know this better than anyone else, but I've had so many teammates who have had, horrible injuries, and whether it was tearing their ACL at the end of college or whatever it is. And I will forever thank my lucky stars that I stayed healthy enough to be able to retire on my own merit and my own choice. But yeah, I felt that high initially for like the first like couple months of, this is so cool, freedom, yay, no one's telling me when to go exercise, what time to go exercise, or what to eat. Like, I can eat what I want. And then it started to sink in. I was like, who am I? I'm not Bridget the cheerleader anymore. Bridget like, who am I? That's always what people had known me as. And I started losing friends. There were a lot of things that started happening because I didn't belong to that, like, I didn't fit in that box anymore, that mold that a lot of people were kind of attracted to. And that was really hard, and so when I was initially switching jobs, I made the difficult decision, and if I did it again, I wouldn't have done this, but I left NBC in Palm Springs to go work for a professional tennis team because I thought it was a great gig, and it ended up being terrible. Great life lesson learned. But yeah, when I was kind of switching through jobs and ended up at CBS in Washington, even though you're writing your own scripts, you're out there shooting your own games and highlights and everything, I felt like I had to still hold up this image of who Bridget the sports anchor was. I'd anchor my sportscasts, but everything was still, yeah, of course there's ad-libbing and conversation, but everything was still scripted. I was still being told, even though I was writing my own scripts, I was still being told what I can and can't say. I couldn't talk about my eating disorder. I couldn't talk about all of the ups and downs that I dealt with through my sport my entire life. I couldn't talk about my depression and anxiety and all of the struggles that I've had with mental health my entire life. Like, I couldn't talk about those things, right? And that was frustrating. Like, as excited as I was to be starting to build out, like, oh, what Bridget as a little kid on the playground, because, backing up here, I always knew that I wanted to be a journalist. I wasn't sure if I knew later on 100% that it was going to be in sports. I didn't know if it meant broadcasting. I didn't know if it meant, print and newspaper. Because I started my first sports reporter experience. I started a school newspaper in elementary school. I can't remember what grade this was, maybe third or fourth grade. Of course, I was the only one that worked on the newspaper, but I would make it, and then I'd go to the copy machine and I'd go make copies. But I'd write it all out by hand and I'd do the illustrations. But how it happened was, and I know this is off topic, but I promise it makes sense. What happened was I loved playing like kickball at recess, and then once, I think it was like fourth grade, no one wanted to play that anymore. Everyone wanted to play tag. And I thought tag was the stupidest game because you'd go chasing boys. It was like boys versus girls, And I was like, ew, I'm not going to go, like, I don't like boys. I'm not going to go. I was so, oh my gosh, like, it was so funny. I was just like, ew. And so I would just sit at the table or like play with the younger kids. And I'm like, this is stupid. So I realized, you know what? If I'm not going to play tag, I'm going to cover it. So that became my first sport that I covered was tag. And I would go around interviewing my classmates, asking them like why they played tag, things about the game. And I would get quotes from my classmates. And that was the first sport that I covered in my personal newspaper. And so, so that's like how that all began. And I loved that part. But obviously, like when I was a kid, I never thought about the whole, I want to be able to be me. So by the time I, was starting to live out my dream and I was on TV talking every night, like I said, there was something missing. I felt like I couldn't really be myself. And I think I was so afraid of failing that if I admitted that, it would seem like I was being weak. And I think most athletes have that kind of complex instilled in them at a young age because you want to win, you want to achieve, whatever it is. I mean, I remember how many competitions I was just not in it and mentally, but like I knew I was like, you know what, but like you're here, like, you know, when you're a kid, it's like your parents are paying for this stuff. You know, you better go out there and try and win a medal. And it's like, there were so many times as a kid where I just like wanted to go home and I wasn't like in it that day for whatever reason. You know, it's because it was my passion. It's just like, I think I never really thought about those feelings until later on. And so by the time I was a sportscaster and I left my last job, and I had this great agent who represented a lot of big people, a lot of, you know, all the biggest sports stations, and I had these opportunities start popping up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like cool, like big job in Miami, big job in Dallas, these all sound great. Having those conversations, talking about money, and then radio silence. It was just like the weirdest thing. But I think it truly was a God thing, because he was like, you're meant to pivot. You're meant to do something else. But I was so depressed. This was about 2 years ago, little over 2 years ago. And I moved home with my parents because I didn't have a job. And so I was like, I'll just, you know, hang out there. And I moved back to California in with my parents. And I felt like a failure because I always thought I'm never going to, you know, come back and move in with my parents. And that's what I did. And honestly, it ended up being the best thing ever, because that sense of failure forced me to make a decision. I could either sit there and mope and wait around, or go take a you know, shitty job elsewhere where I was doing the same exact thing over and over again, not happy. Because again, like I said, even though I was writing my own newscasts, it all was scripted. I was all, you know, I had one job, and that's it. There was no heart in it. And so I thought I can either, you know, wait around or go backwards and take a gig where I'm wanted, where the pay is shit. I'll be honest, like as a sports anchor, I never made more than $25,000 a year. So, and I don't know how much that is for most people, but like for how much work you're putting in, it definitely should be a bigger salary. So I had the decision of that, or I could pivot, try something new. Who cares? You know, I already feel like failure. So what do I have to lose? And I just remember all these conversations with my parents' friends, kind of like, well, are you still trying to be a journalist? Like, you should go into real estate. You should go into party planning, which are all great jobs. But that wasn't what my heart was in. And I kind of felt frustrated, like, wow, you know what? This is why so many people have jobs and they're not happy. You know, so many kids that I went to high school with, and I'm not hating, like everyone has different priorities, but I've seen so many people that I went to high school with who just kind of do the routine of like getting married, getting a job that's good, that pays well, but doesn't seem like they're in it. And I was like, if I'm going to work, I got to be passionate about it. You know, they always, what is that thing? Like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I'm like the biggest fan of that saying, because it's so true. And I think I was so scared when I decided, you know what, screw it, I'm going to just start a podcast. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I was like, well, you know, I've been a sports anchor on TV. This will be fine. It'll be, you know, whatever. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was such an idiot for thinking that. Like I had the idea, and then 2 weeks later launched my podcast. Didn't give myself time to plan and figure out. God, oh my gosh. But honestly, it was great because it just helped me just jump in and get started. And I just started going to a bunch of like podcasting events and trying to network the hell out of myself. And what I realized was like, holy crap, I am meeting more people right now in my industry and in surrounding sister brother industries than I ever did while I was a sports anchor, because I was like so busy getting out and going those highlights, getting out to this game, going back. I never had time to ever network with people. And it was like, or build a social media presence, because all I was doing was like tweeting out highlights from the games or from my sportscast. That's all I was doing. I wasn't getting to be me on social media, whatever. And I had already had such a battle with social media because it had such a negative impact on my mental health. So I took a huge break from Instagram. So when I started my first podcast after Orange Slices, that was really hard for me when I first got back on Instagram and I was like, well, this is, you know what, I just got to do it. And then I started meeting incredible people like you and people who were so supportive and felt like wanted to build me up. And that was the opposite of being in local news. Like I felt like my boss and coworkers, not all of my coworkers, I have some fantastic coworkers, but it felt like everyone was trying to bring each other down. It was all about, and just constant yelling. And there was no, like, I don't know, no, not like we were all coming together to accomplish a goal. And it's just like, come on, people, we're not out here saving lives. Yes, there is a lot of, good that we do for the world, but I think we all take our jobs too seriously that sometimes we forget how to be like a good coworker, how to build each other up. I'm such a big proponent for women building each other up because I've dealt with female on female bullying for a long, part of my life. And that was a really, shitty thing that I dealt with mostly in college with teammates. But not to get off track, but that all kind of like came into my decision of being able to go out on my own and just be like, screw it. You know what? I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to lay everything out for everybody. And I haven't even gotten honest about everything. But I realized, oh my gosh, that's what people want. People are so sick of scripted content, of watching talking heads on TV. I really believed, like, at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, podcasting is the future. And unfortunately, right now, with just some stuff going on, I've had to push my season 3 of my podcast back to summer. But it's also for good reason, because it's like I've got so many things going on that I was able to build. And I'm like, I cannot, I'm so freaking proud of myself, but there are most days, like last night, I was like crying just because I just felt like, we have those times, especially anyone who deals with mental health issues. Like we have those times where we think, what the hell are we doing? Especially when you go on your own, it's scary. And it doesn't, I will say it doesn't get easier. And that's a good thing, because we're faced with these challenges and we have to figure out ways to, buck up and dry our tears and solve problems. And I'm dealing with that big time right now because I tore my rotator cuff and I have nerve damage in my arm right now and carpal tunnel. It like all happened on the same arm. And it's been super frustrating because like I'm a doodler. So that's how I handle my anxiety. I write all my notes on paper. Obviously, I need to be typing. I'm a journalist. I have to be able to write stories and get these projects done for people. Like I have to be able to edit. And so not having my hand to full capacity in my art has been so frustrating. And I have so much respect for anybody who's dealt with chronic pain in the workplace their entire life, because it's made me go a little bit insane. But my whole point to this is just that you're always going to face challenges. So yes, there were those initial challenges when I went into being a full-time journalist. And I kind of had this idea, like, once I get to that job, everything's going to be okay, but that's not how it works. And whenever people ask me like, well, what's your dream? What's your goal? Well, media looks so different now versus 2 years ago. Who knows what it's going to look like next year, in the 5 years, 10 years, whatever. We have to be willing to adapt. And with that is going to come totally new challenges. And that's not on us. Like, I mean, it's on us to be able to adapt and figure out ways to solve those problems. And I try to just tell everyone that, like, people see, I don't know what people see now, but sometimes people look at me and like you said, like they think, oh, she's had it so easy. And I'm like, if you only knew, like there's absolutely, and I have not even laid out half of, what's gone on in my personal life. But I think we all compare each other's outsides to our insides. And that is the most dangerous thing we can do, especially in the social media age, because social media is not going anywhere. And I really believe using social media is the future of media. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I just like took up all your time, but I hope that all made sense. My point is, it doesn't get easier, and it might look like I have my shit together, but I don't. But I just like make things work, and that's how I learn. And honestly, failing and feeling like those days where I'm like, what the hell am I doing, has made me figure out how to problem solve and find solutions and dig deep into spaces that I didn't even know I had. And I'm like so freaking proud of myself for figuring those things out, because I never thought that I would have been able to accomplish this. And now, I don't know how you feel, but now I'm like, I don't want to ever work for anybody else again, because it's amazing. Like, obviously I can't get into a lot of things because of, NDAs and stuff, but people have reached out to work with me who I am just like, oh my God, like I could not have imagined in 5 bajillion years that I would ever be able to, do this for you or whatever. And I'm so proud of that. Like, it's unbelievable. And just, you never know some of your failures. I mean, even just last year during a pandemic, I thought, man, I'm going to have pretty shitty interviews all year. There's no way. But getting to interview somebody like Ken Griffey Jr., who was one of my heroes growing up, was literally the coolest thing ever. I've never been so nervous for an interview, except for probably just like my first interviews on camera in general when I was like a little baby reporter. Oh my gosh. But I would have never been able to have that opportunity if I were still in local news, especially because you have a live shot and you've got, 2.5, 3 minutes, maybe. It's usually only 30 seconds to a minute to get a coach before he's, going out. But, sometimes things change and you can't even get the interview, whatever. But getting like an hour and a half, 2 hours to spend with a sports figure, a legend like that, or so many other people that I've been able to talk to and tell people stories and be honest and tell my story. Like, that's what people want to hear. People don't want to just hear the same thing over and over and over again. They want to hear what's really going on, what's really behind, whether it's an athlete or not, what's really behind that like presence. And I just felt like not only did I want to tell those stories for my interview subjects, but I wanted to tell that story for myself.
Oh, Bridget. Oh my God, I'm over here cheesing from ear to ear right now because as you were talking, all these people were popping into my head who I'm like, I want this person to see this. I'm going to send this recording to this person because you're already helping so many people right now. And there's people who I've told specifically, like, go look up what Bridget is doing and like listen to how much she shares and how vulnerable she is about her story. So there's like specifically like 3-4 young women. I'm like, you need to watch this. Listen to her whole story. So please don't apologize. Thank you for going in and sharing all of that. There's so much there. I definitely want to be respectful of your time, but I want to acknowledge you for a couple of things. The first one is you are a living, breathing example of what it looks like to not be worried about having a seat at the table, but going off and building your own table, especially when something like your happiness is on the line or feeling like your self-expression is being pushed down, is being suppressed. And for you to say, it's not worth it, I'm going to take the risk to move back in with your parents, which we shared when you interviewed me on your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That is something that people don't talk about. A lot of people are doing that, especially in our age group. And, they may be embarrassed about it. But I always say, like, you doing that, us doing that, like, it shows you how serious you are about what you're doing. Like, to swallow your pride. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I was just gonna say, and I was able to build like an awesome studio office, like in my childhood playroom. But anyway, continue.
No, it's just a beautiful thing. And then even when even after moving back home, when people are saying, "Oh, Bridget, why don't you go into real estate?" or why don't you be a party planner? And for you to just silence those voices and be tunnel vision and know what you want for yourself and not allow those outside influence to get to you, I think that's so powerful. Everything you shared is powerful. I know you're a busy woman, but I'm going to have to reach back out to you so we can do a more in-depth interview.
Oh my gosh.
Because we covered probably about 10% of your story and different topics we could have covered in this. And I'm kicking myself for not blocking off more time. But before we get out of here, please tell people how they can get in touch with you. Tell people, just where to find you, where to learn more about your journey and anything else you want to share.
Yeah. So I recently changed my social medias because I felt like, okay, it's getting confusing because some things say Bridget Case and some things say After Orange Slices. So I recently have streamlined everything. So you can either look me up on any social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, whatever. Bridget Case on Instagram, it has like a little underscore at the end because Instagram's stupid for that. There's no Bridget Case on there. I'm trying to get in contact with them. If anyone on here knows how to figure that out, let me know. But yeah, just look up Bridget Case. You'll recognize, and it's the girl who has weird captions and lots of very vulnerable things. So, so yeah, I think, and then my podcast After Orange Slices comes back this summer. It was supposed to come back this spring, but with my whole injury thing, it's been a little bit frustrating. So, but that's the thing. I'm like, you know what? I'm building this presence. It's going to be okay. not being totally on schedule. It's fine. I have that ability. And I owe it to listeners, viewers, followers, whatever, to give them my best work, but also show the mess. So I'm all about that. So yeah, just Bridget Case, just wherever you are.
Yes, awesome. And while you're waiting for season 3 of After Orange Slices to come back, shameless plug, go back and look for my name on there. Listen to my episode.
Yes, just search it. I think right. Yeah.
Yeah, Bridget, thank you so much. One of the most amazing things for anyone tuning in is all the stuff you see that Bridget is doing, all the stuff she's sharing. She's just getting started. That's the most like inspiring thing to me. Is like, wow, she's done this and she's really not even getting warmed up yet. So stay tuned, follow her journey. Thank you.
Totally.
Bridget.
These muscles are still
Yes.
cold. Come on.
That's right. That's what I'm talking about. Still getting taped up. Thank you so much, Bridget. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. Everyone go tap in with this woman.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Bye, Taj.
Bye-bye. Man, folks, how about that Bridget Case? How about her? Go check her out. I'm telling you, do your research. Okay, before we get to this next guest, and Dana is going to kill me. Dana is our programming coordinator, director of programming at Self-Publish in 30 Days. I forgot to tell you, Dana, that our next guest is going to be sharing his screen. So I don't know if we need to bring him on first, whatever we need to do, and I can introduce him. You let me know. I don't mind introducing him first, but I want to make sure he has the ability to share his screen so he can present. Totally forgot to mention that to you. But in the meantime, this next guest, Mr. Keith Sconiers, this guy, sometimes you connect with people and you just know you're going to be friends and partners in business and just in life for a long time. And Keith is definitely one of those guys. I remember the first conversation we had, we were just cracking each other up. Like it started out with just, oh, let's get to know each other. Actually, we're 30 minutes in, an hour in, and both of us are just rolling, cracking jokes. So with that being said, I'm going to give this man a brief introduction, and then we'll dive into, I believe he has a presentation for us, and then we'll do like some interview style stuff at the end. So Keith Sconiers is an entrepreneur, a storyteller, and a catalyst for change. Born on the west side of Fresno, California, Keith faced many adverse circumstances that put him in the at-risk category at a very young age. Despite difficult early years, Keith was accepted into his high school basketball team and went on to play at Portland State University. After graduating, Keith struggled with the transition from basketball to the business world, and he eventually realized that his true passion goes back to his roots, supporting entrepreneurs, athletes, and at-risk youth through coaching, storytelling, and mentoring. In 2016, Keith formed PaySuite, a financial services firm recognized as a premier brand, helping businesses navigate the training and development to fulfill a dream of helping former athletes transition into business after their sport careers. Today, Keith's mission is to help current and former athletes productively and proactively plan ahead to maximize their experience above and beyond the world of athletics. And it starts by helping them own their stories, hook into a supportive network, and become catalysts in their own life. Please welcome the Athlete to Entrepreneur, Mr. Keith Sconiers.
Taj.
Keith, what's up, brother? Whoa, check you out, man. Hold up. I feel like I should have bought tickets.
What's going on, man?
Wait a minute, hold up, man.
I said, Mama, they gonna put me on TV with Taj Deshaun tomorrow. I'm bringing it out.
See, here you go, man. Just let me know where I need to scan my barcode, man. I feel like I should have bought tickets, man. Hold up, bro.
The itinerary is in the app. Open the app.
I can't mess with you, man. See, this is why. You notice I prefaced it by we were cracking up the first time we spoke.
Yeah.
And here you go with this setup. Come on, man.
Yeah, man. I said, baby, I'm on TV with Taj. I am bringing it.
I'm done, man. The headset, the hat, the blazer.
Everything.
Look at you, man.
Right.
I'm surprised, man. I'm surprised you don't have a screen behind you with a bunch of different like people's face, like audience
members.
Right. That's the only thing missing.
Like the whole Tony Robbins, Robbins deal.
That's it. You need a director's chair behind you or something, too,
right?
Man.
The Phil Jackson one. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that'd be a little bit better, man. Yeah. Okay, listen, we can sit here and crack each other up for another hour, but we're not gonna do that today. I want to make sure you have a chance to present. Did you actually need to share your screen, or are you just gonna be speaking?
Yes. Yeah, I do need to share my screen.
Okay. Dana,
there's a share button at the bottom here.
Okay. Dana's gonna kill me.
Hold on one second here. Let me
Open this up. Do you see that? Taj, are you there? So Taj, did that work? Could you hear me
It
when I
did.
pulled that up? Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that back up, and then I'll walk through, and then I'll come back. Is that how this works?
That's perfect. Yeah, we could see it. You couldn't hear me because I was backstage, but how you did it was perfect. We could see your
Okay,
screen.
perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. My name, obviously, Keith Sconiers. Taj, thank you so much for providing me with this opportunity to speak. I wanted to provide a little bit of context in terms of where I come from, what my background is, and how I got to this point to where I am today. So then when we jump back into the conversation, it'll make a lot of sense in terms of where I come from and what my framework of and what my mindset is around the transition from athlete to entrepreneur. So starting out, I started playing basketball as a sophomore in high school. Taj mentioned it in my bio that prior to that point, I was at-risk youth. So expelled 7 times before I got to my sophomore year. So 6 times before I got to high school. My freshman year in college, my freshman year in high school, got expelled as well. 1.3 GPA. Basketball coach approaches me and says, "Hey kid, you could be a Division I athlete." I had no idea what that was, but they were going to Hawaii. And being in Fresno, California, the opportunity to go to Hawaii was just something just phenomenal. And so I took his hand, and he helped me get started in basketball. And I tell people this all the time, which is why I always tell this story, is that I wouldn't be where I am today if he didn't open the door for an opportunity for me to be able to play sports. And so I thank Von Webb, who to me is one of the greatest coaches of all time, for giving me that opportunity to play sports. Because if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be today. I'd probably be on drugs, dead, or in prison. So that's my foundation in terms of how I got started. So started playing basketball. A few years later, I get a scholarship to play ball at Portland State. And Portland State was a great opportunity. Obviously, everyone wants to go off and play Division I athletics, but to me, because I had only been playing basketball for 2.5 years, 3 years, I was still learning about who I was and what my skill set was, and what kind of player I wanted to be. And as a result, being at that program, there was 3 different coaches that I played for in 4 seasons, inconsistent playing time, and just having disagreements with the coaching staff. And that led to frustration, that led to anger. And I didn't know it at the time, but it actually led to a lot of withdrawal of me just sitting in my dorm room, listening to music and just unplugging really from the rest of the team, because as much as I was a great team player, there were aspects of that where I knew that I wasn't getting the opportunity to be the kind of player that I wanted to be, and not getting the playing time that I wanted to have, caused me to just feel very different about being on the team. And so as a result, when I left college, I didn't go play overseas or anything like that. I thought I might have wanted to do that, but after playing for 3 coaches in 4 seasons and not having the career that I wanted to have as a college athlete, I had a lot of different emotions when I left college. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know what success was. No one had ever talked to me about what my purpose was. I was confused about my identity. I didn't have any clear outcomes in terms of what I wanted the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years to look like. And I didn't have any principles that I was going to live my life by. And so as a result of that, when you leave college, I left college with a chip on my shoulder, but I was extremely frustrated. I had no principles and no guidance in terms of how to live and how to move forward. Because my scholarship was over, it was time for me to go figure out how I was going to take care of myself. And that led to 17 jobs in 11 years. And on the outside looking in, from what it looked like from someone else's vantage point, it looked like hurt, depression, confusion, isolation, feelings of abandonment, grief, and especially shame. Because I knew, just like when I was sitting on the bench at Portland State, I knew that I wasn't living up to my potential. I knew that there was more that I could be doing with my life, but I had no principles, no guardrails, no mentorship in terms of how to achieve it. And so the first 11 years out of college, more than a decade of being in what many people call the typical experience of the athlete transition away from sports. And it was through those times that I kept fighting. It was through those times where I began to understand what my purpose was. And when I think about purpose, I created an acronym to think about the framework around purpose. There's a lot of talk right now about identity. There's a lot of talk about mental health. There's a lot of talk about finding your why. But I believe that we need more than just a why. We need a framework on how we're going to live. And that is purpose. And so when I think about purpose, I think about the P for purpose is principles. What principles will I live my life by daily? What principles will you live your life by daily? I try to live my life on based on the foundation of being honest, transparent, integrity. What unique abilities do I possess? That's the U for purpose. When I think about unique ability, for me, it's connecting with people, building relationships. Those are unique abilities that I bring to the table when I work with clients. When I think about the R in purpose, relationships, who do you want to be a hero to? What relationships are important to me? Right behind me, you see my grandmother on the wall. She raised me when I was in high school. She was my best friend. She passed away in 2007. I want to make my grandmother proud. I know she's looking down from heaven on me, and everything that I do every single day is about trying to fulfill all the good advice that she gave me when I was in high school, when I wasn't following it. When I think about the P in purpose, the second P, I think about persistence. I think about every single night that I laid down in my apartment that had no furniture, eating macaroni and cheese. That wasn't even the good macaroni and cheese. It was the cheap macaroni and cheese. I think about the peanut butter sandwiches that I had to eat when I was trying to get out of debt, when I couldn't even afford the jelly on the peanut butter sandwich, right? So what are the reasons that will drive you to persist? When I think about the O in purpose, I think about staying optimistic. When I lived with my dad who was battling with addiction, he would always tell me, son, it's not always going to be like this, right? When I think about optimism and being optimistic, I look forward to the future in terms of what is possible in my potential and what can I achieve? And so how can I look at this current situation that I'm going through and pull the positive scenarios out of it? What are the positive lessons that come from tremendous failure? When I think about the S in purpose, I think about the story and what is the story I'm telling myself? So what is my story from birth to now and from now to the future? So I write my story from the past to now and from now to the future, so that as I step into tomorrow, I am living the life that I've already written about. When I think about the E in purpose, I think about an excitement. What is it that lights me up? What is it that fires me up? And these are questions that you should ask yourself. What excites you? Don't just go out from athletics and go just pursue a job that pays you the most money. What excites you? And then how can you increase your effort in pursuing that? These are the things that caused me to 2017 to put in a 2-week notice on a job that I wasn't prepared financially to leave and start a business. And then founded the company in 2016, but in 2017 is when I put in my 2-week notice to start PaySuite to help entrepreneurs across North America build better businesses through payment technology. Business has gone really well. It's been incredible. It's been a fun ride. And the reason why, as I think about my story, when I look back on why did I start the business? I didn't start the business because I cared about payment technology. I started the business because I care about serving entrepreneurs. And why? Because when I was an at-risk kid on the verge of homelessness, living with a dad who was battling addiction, it was the entrepreneurs who paid my dad $5, $10, paid my dad to build homes, and they paid me $5, $10, $20 around the job site to clean up around the job site when he was building homes for them. So I look at my company as a way for me to give back to the entrepreneurs that helped me get to where I am today. And then in 2020, I started Catalyst. And why did I start Catalyst? I started Catalyst because when I was an athlete for 11 years, struggling, trying to figure out who I was, what I wanted, and how to get it, and not having the answer to it, I wanted to be a part of the solution. I wanted to be able to surround myself with people like Taj Deshawn, people that have been putting in the work, helping people figure out who they are, what they want, and how to get there, and to be a part of the community, to be a part of the change, and to be a catalyst. And so my name's Keith Sconiers. That's who I am, and that's what I'm up to. I look forward to hearing your story. I do have my contact information here, but you could also get that from Taj Deshawn. And I look forward to being a part of the conversation with you and to hear your story. So thank you.
Wow. Keith, can you hear me?
Yes.
So first and foremost, brother, thank you for that. That was
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to be funny right now. I was actually over here getting emotional at certain parts during your story. And so for anybody listening, like obviously Keith and I already know each other, so I knew most of that or a lot of that, especially the background, the history, you know, early childhood and all that. But that was my first time hearing the story in depth and seeing that presentation just like you guys. So it hits different when you get to hear it in that context. And I know we're here to talk about, you know, how you went into business and more about Catalyst and more about Pay Suite and all that. But I want everybody listening just to stay tuned because we're going to do an in-depth interview with Keith within the next couple of months or so, just to share more of that story. So stay tuned to Thrive After Sports podcast, Power of Story, maybe even Author Spotlight. You might have a book by then, man. So, you know, I just want to start with this, man, because I think a lot of athletes can resonate with not having the career that they wanted, whether that was collegiately or professionally. So you take that, like you said, the chip on your shoulder, the bitterness, the shame of that, which I experienced too. So, you know, I'm speaking from experience just like you. You take that and you compound that with coming out and then having more shame, more embarrassment, more confusion, more struggle through, you know, trying to map out who you are and who you want to be after already having a career that you're not proud of or ashamed of, right? For anybody listening in live or you know, who listens to this recording who is going through something similar, or for the athletes who may go through that at some point in their lives, what is on your heart to share with those people right now? Can you just give some words of encouragement or advice?
Yeah, I would say number one, to recognize that it's an opportunity, that you're not alone, and that you just got to keep going. And more importantly, though, as it relates to keep going, I think that sometimes when we think about keep going, it's like we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we expect a different result. I would say that keep going, but keep going from an intelligent perspective. And the intelligent way to keep going is to get around other people that have already been through it, to build those quality relationships, to find people that are living the way that you want to live, doing things the way that you want to do things, that you honor and that you respect, and build a relationship. Right. And so I would say that in terms of, you know, like my dad always told me, he was like, son, it ain't always going to be like this. You know, and he would tell that to me as we were just involved in just in this, just out there in the streets, you know, and I always listened to it. I was like, man, it made me feel better. And it wired the way I think. Like, it's not always going to be like this. And for the person that's going through this right now, it's not always going to be like this, but you got to put the work in, right? You got to put the work in just like you did as an athlete. Like, you got to go to work every day. And what going to work every day looks like is finding people that are living the way that you want to live, that you honor, that you respect, that are living up to the values that you personally embody, and building a relationship. And that relationship will open doors for you. And not always open doors in terms of opportunity, but open doors to conversations that you can have that can help you learn new things that you need to learn to improve your life.
Really solid advice. Thank you for that, man.
Yeah.
Something else you shared, well, you actually kind of, because what you just shared about the networking piece and connecting with other people, it also
Yeah.
covers something else that I wanted to pull out of your story, which is the isolation. Because
Yes.
I went through that too, man. It's tough when you have all these emotions going on, but you're just like, I'll deal with it on my own. I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. I don't want to open up. So I love that
Yeah.
you brought that up, because a lot of times the way to get out of that, not only the emotional side of it, but even like to advance your career, or just get some guidance on what you want to do, is exactly what you're talking about, man. Just
Hmm.
open it up to people. And it starts out a lot of times with just saying, I'm struggling right now. And you have to have those vulnerable and open and honest conversations. And then that turns into, okay, I'm struggling right now, but I also don't know what I'm doing right now. And
Yeah.
once you find what you're doing, then it's like, hey, I know what I want to do, but I need help with that. So the conversations evolve. And like you said,
Yeah.
Keith, you keep reaching out to people that eventually over time, if you continue that process, you're going to end up where you want to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Whew, my goodness, man. I'm still recovering from your presentation, man. I was sitting over here having to fight back the tears. I'm not even being funny when I say that. I'm like, wow,
Oh,
man.
thanks, man. I
I
appreciate
started
it.
yeah, it's very I appreciate you going there and sharing those parts, because that's the stuff people need to hear, right? You can get on here and give business advice all day, and that's great. You know,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. But yeah, man. So the not credit card, excuse me. Is it credit card processing company?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You
Hmm.
mentioned that you did that. I just want to hear a little bit more, because that's very specific, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a lot of ideas about what they want to do in the realm of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. Why was that your first entrepreneurial venture? Why did you decide to go that direction?
Well, that was the first one. So let me backtrack a little bit. So I had gone into the life insurance and wealth management and planning industry back in 2013, right? And it wasn't going that well. And they pretty much told me that I shouldn't be in sales. They're like, this is not working for you. You don't ask for the business. You don't like, you're just not, it's not working out. So they basically found out I had a part-time job and they fired me, told me I couldn't work there anymore. Fast forward 2 days ago, I just signed a lease on an office space that's like upstairs from where they are right now.
Gotta love it.
Right. And so I had gone to work with them, and then when they fired me, they kind of let go of another employee that was there, and he went to work in credit card processing, and I did too, for a large company named Heartland Payment Systems. Worked there for 2.5 years, had an up and down career there. But to get to answer your question in terms of why was that the first entrepreneurial was that your question? Like, why was that the first entrepreneurial venture?
Yeah, how did you end up going that route as your first
Yeah.
entrepreneurial venture?
I had always done things part-time on the side, like home-based businesses and network marketing and things like that on the side, up until that point. So when I first got out of college, I had gotten exposed to the personal development and the network marketing industry and things like that. But this was the first full-time thing that I had done. And how it started was that I worked at Heartland for 2.5 years. So I got some experience and some really deep understanding of the industry there. And then when I left Heartland, I had enough information about what I was doing, how it worked, and what the pain points that business owners had as it relates to these specific companies, that I had enough knowledge now that I was confident enough to go out and go help companies with that specifically. I wasn't interested in doing credit card processing at all. So sometimes we think that we're looking for the thing that's going to like excite us and that's important, and I mentioned like that's an important piece of purpose, but the aspect of credit card processing isn't the credit card processing that excites me. It's the opportunity to meet with business owners to help them build a strong business, and there's hundreds of ways to do that, right? And it just happened that it was credit card processing because I had the experience to go out and do it. I had done it for another company already. So now it's just, all right, I'm going to do it for myself now instead of doing it for somebody else. That was the only delineation there. So that's why I would say it was like the first like full-time, thing in terms of entrepreneurship that I had pursued, and it worked out.
I'll say it definitely worked out, man. And hang on, I'm gonna go close the window, but I'm taking my earbuds. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep talking to you. There's a bunch of
Yep.
commotion in front of my house right now.
Yeah. You
First
got
of
they
all, man,
bring that flat screen in for you or what?
nah, man. I don't know what's going on. It's always there's never anything going on in this neighborhood until I'm recording something or on the live, and then all of a sudden, we got trucks backing up and construction going on in front of the house. Like, what I
Yeah.
was gonna say though is first and foremost, man, congratulations on that office space. Now
Thank
that is,
Thank you.
you
Thank
know,
you.
for that, that's not a coincidence, man, for it to be right above where you started out, you know.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And then another thing, man, I really love that you touched on. Of course, you and I have had conversations about this, how important it is to be intentional. But what I'm pulling from your story with you going this route is that you just kind of pick something and you're like, you saw a window. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't about credit card processing. It was about, I see something that I can take and run with this and really apply myself, apply that athletic mindset to,
Mhm.
and take this to the top to put yourself in position. That's one of the most important things I pulled out
Yeah.
of what you said. It wasn't
Yeah.
about the industry. It wasn't about the
Yeah.
business. It was about putting
Yeah.
yourself in position, man.
Yeah. And it's about the unique ability too, right? Because I have a unique ability to understand what's going on in credit card processing. Even though it's not a passion, how I'm wired, I can understand how it works. So I could take that and I can go do something with it. And while I was with the company, it was like, oh, this isn't my passion. Oh, this isn't like my dream and like all this stuff. And sometimes we get sidetracked with our emotions. Our emotions be like, well, this doesn't light me up. But if you have a specific skill, you could be more intentional about like where you're working at right now, learn what you need to learn and glean what you need to glean from the environment and the situation and the relationships so that you can in the future potentially convert that into your whatever it is that you want to do, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, an executive, or an investor. You could take those current experiences in a job that you hate and go turn it into a business and completely love it. Like Taj, I was always depressed when I was working at Heartland because they was always barking at me like how many appointments and how many closings and like all this stuff, right? All these distractions. And I've signed way more business than I ever did when I was there. I'm in the exact same industry competing with my old employer and I'm having a ball. I'm telling you, it's like, it's crazy. It's like you think that, oh, well, that industry didn't work for me, so I'm gonna go do something else. No, I am having a ball doing this. And it like, it doesn't necessarily on paper make sense why.
Right. Yeah, man. I love that you laid that out because I think that's so important for people to hear that you took that route, you ran with it. We got to spend some time on Catalyst, man. This is like, what had you decide you're already a successful entrepreneur, and then 2020, was it in the middle of the pandemic or did you start it before the pandemic started?
I started thinking about building Catalyst at the end of 2019. And really it wasn't like I started off like I wanted to build something, but I always had this passion of wanting to do something for athletes because I knew how I just from my own personal story, I knew it wasn't, I went to class, Taj, like they talk about athletes like, oh, these athletes, they go and they spend all their time like playing their sport and they don't go to class and they don't treat education serious. Taj, I picked all my own classes. I pursued my education. Nobody ever ran wind sprints for me or suicides because I was in class, And when I got done, I was still lost. I mean, a decade, Taj. I mean, and so for me, I know it's not just me. And I know that it's not just athletes. We have $2.5 trillion worth of education debt out there because the education system is built on decades old framework of employment. And so to get back to answer your question, it's like I just wanted to do something. So I started just putting together curriculum and just putting together little videos here and there because it's just a passion, like want to help people. Like I studied sociology when I was in college because I want to be a social worker. I wanted to help people, and that I help entrepreneurs, but I still want to help athletes. I know, especially the athletes that come from my neighborhood, they're battling not only the athletic transition, but they're also battling to the transition of coming from the community where education isn't great to begin with, right? So like you come from this neighborhood where you didn't have no opportunity to go travel the world based on your education. Athletics gave that to you, but then when you get done with athletics, you still have this gap in terms of understanding of how to live, how to think, how to pursue opportunity. And so I know there's just hundreds of thousands of athletes like me that came from neighborhoods that I came from that, they planned on leaving the community and coming back with millions of dollars from playing sports, and they didn't get that opportunity. And so now what do? Right? You're going to work for $40,000-$50,000 a year and not be able to help your mom with the rent. That was one of the things that really motivated us. I remember standing outside and my Uncle Clarence talking to me about, man, yeah, grandma needs somebody to make it big, You know what I mean? And feeling that and feeling like, man, I got to make it big. And then when I didn't, it's like, now what? I still had that passion to really want to give back and help and serve and mentor and coach family members or other people that came from my neighborhood. And I can't if I'm just going to go out and go sell, sell restaurant uniforms for $45,000 a year or work at the car lot. Like there's just other athletes I know they're in my situation, and Catalyst is just my way of giving back and trying to help and serve.
Well said, brother. Man, let me give you some acknowledgments before we start talking about where people can find you. I thank you for not only for what our friendship has grown into, and we really just connected.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's been 6 months, man, but I just thank you for your friendship and, all the people you've introduced me to, and not only for all the things that you do for the athlete community and for the world and people in general, but for who you are as a man and for sharing your heart. So, and I really do thank you for coming on and sharing yourself with us today, man. I think it was, I knew you were going to bring the heat, man, but I didn't expect to get emotional, so I definitely appreciate you. And
I'm an emotional guy, man, so you don't have to, you can
Okay.
let it out, man. Let it out, Taj.
Okay, good, man. Okay, good. Man, before we get out of here, and like I said, everyone, please keep an eye out for Keith. He'll definitely be back on several of our shows. But please tell people where they can get in touch with you, how they can learn more about Catalyst and all of that, man.
Yeah, so the best way to find me is on my website, which is keithsconiers.com. And that's KEITHSC as in cat, O as in Oscar, N as in Nancy, IERS.com. And they can get to me directly and to PaySuite or to Catalyst from there.
Awesome. Well, you have just heard from Keith Sconiers, the man himself. Definitely appreciate you again for coming on to share, man. We'll be in touch very soon. I hope you have a great Saturday. And thank you again, brother. I appreciate all that you do.
You too, Taj. I really appreciate you, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Oh, man. Should have had my Kleenex ready for Keith's presentation. You got me over here worked up. And Dana, thank you so much for making that happen. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't let you know ahead of time. I can't wait to see you in person soon so I can give you a big hug for all that you do. Next up, okay, Myriam Glez. This woman, I'm excited for this. This woman holds a very special place in my heart. We'll probably get into that whole story. I wouldn't have, she really helped me with the coaching, the transition coaching for athletes, and, gave me an opportunity to really hone my craft. And let's just bring her on. Okay, let me give the bio. Myriam Glez is a two-time Olympian in synchronized swimming. Originally from France, she has a unique international perspective as she has lived and competed. No, excuse me. Let me start over. She has a unique international perspective as she has lived, competed, and worked in 5 different countries. Myriam retired from synchronized swimming in 2002 to attend. Sorry, let me check this real quick. I see you, Dana. Okay. Myriam retired from synchronized swimming in 2002 to attend business school at the European School of Management. Then she came out of retirement in 2008 and competed for the Australian national synchronized swimming team in the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing. Following her second retirement, Myriam combined her business and sport knowledge to return to sport and worked in high performance and sport management in England and in the US, where she was the USA synchronized swimming CEO for 6 years. That's crazy. I didn't even know all of this about Myriam. More recently, she founded Athlete Soul with other former athletes, and Athlete Soul is a nonprofit organization which supports athletes as they transition out of sports and raises awareness about the challenges of athletic retirement. Please welcome to Athlete to Entrepreneur, Ms. Myriam Glez.
Hey, Taj. Thanks for the introduction.
I know I messed it up a little bit. You have so many credentials. I was like, I was trying to get through all of it, but
Makes me sound really old.
No, I think when people hear that introduction, they're gonna be like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And I really wanted to start out with like how you came out of retirement. I think that would be interesting for people to hear. Like, what was that whole process like of being like, okay, I'm retired, I'm going to school, I'm doing all these things, and then you decided to go back in 2008 to compete in the Beijing Olympics. Can you tell us a little bit of the backstory on that?
Yeah, and I have to step back to the first retirement, I think, if I tell you that story. So
okay,
the first time around, I did not choose to retire. This was right before the Athens Olympics. And when I came back for the new season, I had just been accepted in business school. And my coaches said, basically, it's either you prepare for the Olympics and you train with us full time, or you're going to school, but we don't want you to do both. And so at the time I was like, there's no way I'm going to give us this spot in a really good school. None of my parents have been to college. I wanted to have a good degree. This would open up so many doors for me. And I was always pretty focused on education. So I ended up stepping away. It wasn't really a choice. And I dived in full into the school. I found a job at the same time because I couldn't afford to pay for the school. So I had a company sponsor me through the whole 3 years of the 4 years of the school. So it was a hotel company that was supporting athletes. So I ended up working for them, going to school at night. And then when I graduated from school, they had an opening for a position in Australia, and I requested to go overseas. And that was a really interesting time because they said, we have a position opening, but it's next week. Do you want to go to Australia? And I was like, sure, I'll move. So I ended up graduating, moving straight to Australia. I didn't even go to graduation, and started my job there a week later. And then the colleague I was working with actually moved to a different place, and they offered me the job, and that became more of a permanent situation. And so as I was down under, a way to find, your new community and expand your social network is to go through sport. So I remember I called the federation, I asked for a coaching position, and they didn't have, and I was happy to volunteer. It wasn't really for the work, it was more to meet people, and they didn't have a club available in Sydney. But they offered for me, they said, well, why don't you come to the national championship and swim? And I thought, oh my God, I haven't swum in 3 years. Like, this is crazy, but why not? It's a good way to have fun and do it. So I ended up attending that competition. I swim an old routine and I won the competition. And the next Monday, as I went back to work, I got a phone call and they said, hey, would you consider swimming for the national team? And I was like, no way, I've been retired for 3 years. I have a full-time job. This is never going to work. And they said, okay. But my colleagues, we worked in a big open space. My colleague heard about it. And I got a phone call from the company CEO asking me to go to his office. I got to his office and he said, so about this national team appointment, are you going to take it? And I was like, what? How does this travel so fast? And then they offered me basically a sponsorship offer that I couldn't really refuse, where they said, we'll help you in any way we can, keep your job, you can come in later, you can leave early, you can travel for your competition. We just ask you that you attend, some of the internal conferences and you do some promotion within the company and tell your story, and we want to use you, for our brand. So that was like the best offer I could ever get. And I went back training, swimming, competing, but this time around, in my own terms and with a great support and sponsors behind me, which was amazing. And so I returned to the Olympics and then I retired. And I think for me, it was fantastic because I had the option to come back, do it for different reasons. And, if you're given a second chance, you'll enjoy every step of it, especially when you're competing for another country. And then when I stepped back again, it was like, yeah, I'm done. I've done everything I could. I came back. This feels really positive compared to the first time. So it was amazing. Kind of a really lucky opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. I never heard that story from you before. And it's kind of like almost every athlete's dream where, you've been retired for like 3 years and then all of a sudden they call you back. Like, I still have dreams that, even though I just turned 30, like my college is going to call me back and be like, Taj, we need you to suit up and play one more game.
And let me be clear, coming back it was very difficult physically. The sport had completely changed. It was so much faster, so much more athletic. I was getting older, recovery was tough. Like, I don't think I quite made it back to the level I was at. Competing for Australia was a lower level than I had been when I was competing for France. So I knew that the result would not be exactly the same, but that's also not what I was looking for. And we were training with a coach from Russia, and Russia was the leading country in the world. So for me, it was learning from these coaches, things that perhaps I hadn't seen before. And it was using this opportunity in different ways. I mean, being in a team with people from another country, learning their way of doing things, interacting differently with people and at a different time in your life, and taking that challenge of trying to come back with such a long break. I mean, there was just other things that were really important and that made the whole thing super valuable from a personal growth perspective.
Right. Yeah, and obviously, you understand the challenges that athletes face after transition, which is why you founded Athletes All in the first place. But I'm curious, like after you left Beijing, after your last time competing, did you have any challenges, or was it kind of more of a graceful transition because you knew going into it, hey, I got this second chance? And did you have a softer landing, or were there still some challenges with your transition afterwards?
I think the second time around was so much easier. Because I had a job, because I was married. I had like a proper situation to fall back onto. So I think that part was much easier. And also I had decided, this was it. There was no way I was gonna keep going. Where the first time around, emotionally was challenging, even though I'm like always pushing forward and not really looking back. Once I've made a decision and I'm taking advantage of what I've decided and I'm trying not to look back. But I remember doing some of the classic things that athletes do when they're retired, the fitness yo-yo, exercising like crazy and then stopping. But I was also struggling financially, and I had to find ways to pay for my school, which eventually was done by finding this company that was giving me a job. But then I had to work on the weekend and coach at night in addition to that to be able to pay my rent. So I struggled on the financial side. Yeah, I mean, and definitely the identity side, I feel like every athlete will go through that at some point. The second time around, I think identity-wise, that I felt better because I had 4 years prior where I had been working. I knew I could do other things outside of sport, and that really helped. I had been to business school, had been working. I also lived in Thailand for a year with the hotel company I was working for. So I knew that I could fall back on my feet regardless of where I was.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's you already had lived a little bit, and like you said, had something to go back to, where it wasn't just like, a family, a career, all of this was in place, which is awesome. And then I know that there's a lot of steps. I talked about them in your bio. There's a lot of steps in between Beijing and you founding Athletes Whole. So is there anything along the way that was kind of leading you to this point? Did you ever have ideas of starting something like Athletes Whole, or was it something like, how did the idea come about for you to found that company or that organization?
So I think after my first retirement, there was always frustration and around the fact that, and this is maybe a little bit specific to synchronized swimming because the hours of training are enormous every day, and it's really complicated to combine education and athletics. And also the system in France is not necessarily set up for that, but actually it was everywhere around the world. And I think in certain sport, it's just really difficult to combine a certain type of academics. Like if you want to be a lawyer, or if you want to be going to medical school or business school, it's nearly impossible to combine that with sport. And I was always frustrated with that. I always felt that there could be some adjustment on both sides. Why can't sports league and coaches understand the importance of developing outside of sport, because I felt I was much stronger when I came back from mentally, from having lived different things, from having done different things. The strengths that you get from a mindset perspective, it was great. I mean, there were skills that were a little bit more difficult, but they were like on speed, on flexibility. There was a lot of things that I did better. And so I was always hoping that there would be a little bit of give from the sport industry, but also a little bit of give from the corporate side on, like, you can hire people and not have them there 100% of the time, but still contribute, 100% to your company. How can we get the corporation to understand that? And so I still think there is a place for athletes to combine both. And I think that the flexibility and the virtual work is bringing that a little bit more to the forefront. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then I, as a coach and as a team leader, I saw a lot of athletes struggle with identity crisis post-sport, or even having a degree and not knowing what they wanted to do and not knowing how to transition and what to do. And so I think watching it from the sideline plus my own experiences is sort of what brought athletes all more forward, and the feeling of like there is a lack of understanding on how we can use those skills, those people with incredible talent, and switch them over in a different place. This could be done much more efficiently, quicker, so that these incredible people can continue to contribute to society positively and really continue their impact. Why are we losing this? Why are we losing this and not using it? We should harvest those skills. So that, I think that's where I came from. It's a bit of a combination of things.
As it always is, yeah. And it's been amazing to watch the growth of Athlete Soul as well. And I'm grateful just, to be a part of it, and that I connected with you early, because a little bit of backstory for people who don't know, I was listening to a podcast and I heard Myriam tell her story and talk about Athlete Soul. And I'm like, this is when I was a year or two into doing transition coaching for athletes. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. I have to get in touch with this woman. So I did what I always do. I just reached out. I just took a shot. And for anyone who doesn't know, Myriam is like a people person and super like willing to help and have conversations with people. So we connected, and we're going back and forth and kind of sharing each other's curriculum and how we're going about the athletes transition. And we're like, wow, this is very similar. Like, and I think instantly there was a connection, like, okay, you get it. You understand there's no checking boxes. They're just cookie cutter solutions. It was all very well thought out. And then I was fortunate enough that you just so happened to be building a team of transition coaches at the time, and, gave me the opportunity to coach for your organization. And it's a beautiful thing. I was saying at the beginning how grateful I am to be a part of it. And I know it's still early and there's some really exciting things coming from in the future for athletes. So, but for people tuning in, I always say a lot of people don't understand building a nonprofit is very entrepreneurial. There's not a whole lot of difference. You have to build teams and systems and grow and scale. And, can you just dive a little bit into the process of what it's like starting from nothing, starting from scratch and building a nonprofit and building Athlete Soul up to where it is today? Like, what is that process like?
Yeah, so I think the first step for us were really very much legal and compliance. So you got to build your shell, basically. So, and that's very similar to any corporation. Figure out from a legal perspective. So for a nonprofit, you have to build your bylaws. You have to submit your bylaws to whichever state you register in, and then for a nonprofit specifically, you have to apply for tax exemption, which is your most important step, because that's what will help you do all your fundraising. So that typically can take up to a year to get your tax exemption from the IRS. It's a lot of legal paperwork. We actually got it pretty quickly. And then once you've done everything at a federal level, you do it at your state level as well. So there's a bunch of registrations and things. So that's sort of the legal compliance side. And with that goes, your accounting, building your accounting, getting your business account from a banking perspective. We decided very early on that we would do everything virtually. Even before COVID, we knew that would be our model, because we thought, one, it's the future. Two, we're nonprofit. We want to save money from any type of rent, and three, athletes are always on the road. So let's find them where they are instead of in a specific location. The other side is more of the marketing side, building your website, how you're going to communicate with people, developing your different communication channels. Those are really steps to build your shell of your organization. And then the next step, we're really looking at the services, how we're going to put together the different services that we offer, what's the content. So the first year was about building the shell. The second year has been really about developing content and programs. And then the next step for a nonprofit is the focus on fundraising. And obviously these steps can be done in different order depending on what your focus is on. What else can I share? Yeah, this would be the three things you would do. And then prior to all of this, we really started with just like any business, creating a business plan, having some direction on who do we want to serve, how do we want to serve these people, what are our competitors, what does the market look like, where are we going to sit within the market, what is the way to differentiate ourselves and be unique compared to everybody else, how do we bring in revenue in, how do we serve the different audiences, etc. So I think it's pretty similar to any business, but it's definitely daunting when you get started because there is so much to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've come to admire about it over time is just your strategic approach, because you just named a lot of moving parts and a lot of different things, but it's not like you're just waking up every day like, what am I doing today? Like you have a roadmap mapped out and you're playing the long game. And so like recently, that's something that I've been like, I admire people like you, and I'm able to kind of watch you and study how you're building this system. Even with me coming on as vice president of Self-Published in 30 Days and being able to work directly under Darren Palmer, I get to watch him grow and lead and build and scale teams as well. So it's like I have even more respect for you now than even when we first connected, because I look at you as like, how did Myriam actually build and scale this and build this out? So I'm getting to study you, and I think that's really cool. And I know you have a lot of exciting things going on right now, but what is the future of Athlete Soul? We can talk kind of like short term or more like way out into the future. What's on the horizon?
Yep. And I think this is super timely because this is exactly what we're working on. And when you talk about entrepreneurship, I think that's one element that's very difficult, and I still kind of struggle with it, is the structure you have at point A is not the structure you'll have at point Z where you want to be at. And so you've got to evolve your structure throughout the life of your organization as you grow, and manage cash flow as you grow with the structure. So there are points in your life. And right now we actually I've been expanding our structure to bring in more people, but it's trying to find that time frame where it makes sense to do it, when you're ready for it. How long will that last for? What's the next checkpoint where you're going to perhaps have a different growth? And also considering, like, for example, we haven't done a lot of partnership with bigger brands or bigger organizations because we want to be fully ready. We want to have a really good product. We want to be able to serve those partnerships really well and activate them really well and So you have to have the structure and the people in place in order to do that. So it's finding that balance, right, between moving still forward and developing, but still have the structure in place at those times. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's a really
So you
great
asked
point.
me what the future is. Right now, we are expanding, bringing in more people so that we can delegate some of the more operational things that we do related to programming, events, so that me and some other members and board members can really focus on doing more fundraising and having more financial capabilities so that we can support more athletes individually. So our goal is to really support athletes one-on-one with the transition coaching, with internship, with career coaching. And in order to do that, we want to be able to offer more scholarships. And so we raise more money for that.
Right.
So more fundraising, more athletes, and so on.
Yeah. I love how you kind of went through the process of, what do they always say? It's like entrepreneurship or building a business is like trying to build a plane while you're already in the air. Is that the analogy? Or something like that? The plane's already in the air, but you're having to build it and adjust it on the fly. And I think
it's like those games you did as a kid, where you're moving the board behind you, in front of you, and then stepping on it, and again and again. So there's a little bit of like, oh, I got to deal with all the operational stuff, but then I need to think about things in 5 years. I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly doing that. You're pulled in two different directions. And that's what's exciting, I think, because you're still attached to reality and the day-to-day stuff. And I mean, this morning I did the final registration renewal with the Attorney General for California and taxes. And then I'm thinking about a strategic meeting that we have tomorrow with some of our board members about, the next steps. And so I think that's what you do as an entrepreneur is, you're running the race, but you're thinking about the Olympics, and you're constantly doing that. And it's really fascinating because I think it really challenges you. And for athletes typically who have a lot of energy and very ambitious, I think it's a really relevant field of working because you are challenged in every way possible.
Right. Emotionally,
Mhm.
spiritually, it is definitely a challenge, like you said. And that's why we're even here. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's the whole point of these events, is just to show, not only give examples of people like yourself, but just to show that athletes make phenomenal entrepreneurs for that very reason, because we love that excitement. We love that, like, okay, every day is game day. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm ready to respond and I'm ready to think on my feet and make some magic happen. Like Dana said
And
earlier,
you understand the management of multiple goals. You understand the management of achieving 2 days training goal, and how you're going to transfer that on game day and how you're going to react on game day. So I think that's really important because it's exactly what you do as an entrepreneur.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Myriam, but I have one final question for you. Because I know everything that you've done and everything that you're going to do in your life is going to be, of course, Athlete Soul is a major, like, monumental thing, but there's going to be so much more. So what is the legacy of Myriam Glez? Like, how do you want people to remember you throughout the rest of time, the rest of history? How do you want to go down in the history books?
This is really interesting because I hear this question a lot, and I don't really need to be remembered as anything. And even for Athlete Soul, like for me, I think of it as a system with many, many people that supports it. And I think that for me, that's what the beauty of it is that nothing can function just with you. So if I can be part of this movement forward of like improving how we help athletes transition out of sport, I'll be pretty happy, but it doesn't need to be about me. And separately, I feel the same way, just in my life in general. And I know we like to think as ourselves as pretty special, but I like to think as myself as a pretty pretty general person that takes care of her family and help her kids, and it's just part of helping everybody. But I don't need to be remembered for anything.
I definitely hear you on that. Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't take myself very seriously at all, and I know what you mean. But I'm gonna acknowledge you anyway, because the work you're doing is very important, and you an athlete's soul is making history and changing the game for athlete transition. So I know it's not about you, but you deserve to be acknowledged anyway. Matter of fact, I think this is the only copy of my book that I have here, but I acknowledged a lot of people in my book, but you were one of them, and I just want to read this for everybody on the line. I'm gonna make it awkward for you right now and just read your acknowledgement out loud. So I wrote, "Thank you to Athlete Soul founder Myriam Glez for believing in my coaching ability enough to bring me on board as a transition coach for her amazing organization. Being an Athlete Soul coach has enabled me to grow in my coaching ability 10 times faster than I would have been able to by relying solely on my own processes. I encourage everyone to go check out what Athlete Soul is doing to help athletes transition at athletesoul.space. I know I already gave the website address, but Myriam, please tell everyone how they can learn more about Athlete Soul, how they can get in touch with you, and where you can be found, all of that.
Yeah, so you can definitely go to the website, which actually is now athletesoul.org.
Oh.
We're making progress, woohoo. Or you can reach me at Myriam at athletesoul.org. And then I want to bounce back on what you just read, because I think the important message here is really that we all much stronger together, and we can make a bigger impact if we join forces. And for me, this is what this is about. With Athlete Soul, with meeting you, with meeting other people in this space, the more we can share ideas, bounce off each other, support each other, the more impact we're going to make. And this is what I love about the organization, about what you do, our connection, and that's definitely how I want to keep moving forward. Is just use the strengths of everybody so that we can have a better impact.
That's right. Well, Myriam, thank you again. Thank you so much for your time on a Saturday, for taking time away from the family to come on and share with us. This was awesome having you here, and I'm looking forward to everything we're working on now behind the scenes, and then everything that's coming out in the future with us and Athlete Soul. And I just thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Taj. Thanks for everything you do, because you're pulling your weight, man. It's awesome. It's really cool. And I love to see what you've done with Athlete to Entrepreneur and all the different books. And hopefully we can do an Athlete Soul book very soon too.
Oh, it's coming, folks. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll keep that in the wraps for now, but keep a lookout for that Athlete Soul book. It's coming your way.
All right. Thanks, Taj.
All right, thank you. Have a good one. All right, everybody. There you have it. Athlete to Entrepreneur 7. We will be back with Athlete to Entrepreneur 8 next month. Stay tuned for the dates. As always, I have to thank the team at Self-Publishing 30 Days for even making this happen and supporting me with these events. Thank you to Dana Gunn, our director of programming, for saving me yet again and making everything flow smoothly. Make sure you go grab your copy of Thrive After Sports at thriveaftersportsbook.com. Make sure you visit Self-Publish in 30 Days for all your publishing needs. I love you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.